moment she realizes the life she built was never entirely hers. It is not the silence of peace. It is not the silence of rest. It is the silence that descends when every single thing you thought you knew about the person you loved, every late night you forgave, every unanswered text you rationalized, every instinct you buried beneath the weight of your own loyalty, collapses into one undeniable truth. And that truth is this: he had chosen someone else. Not once, not by accident, but deliberately, methodically, and for years. This is the story of Vivienne Caldwell, a woman who stood in the marble lobby of her husband's Manhattan skyscraper and smiled for a Wall Street Journal photographer on the same afternoon that a woman named Renata Cole was being handed the keys to a penthouse apartment that Vivienne's husband, Carter Caldwell, had purchased with cash. No paper trail, no disclosure, no remorse, just a signature and a secret. Carter Caldwell was not just rich. He was the kind of wealthy that makes other wealthy people uncomfortable. Forbes estimated his net worth at $4.2 billion. He sat on 3 corporate boards. He had the private cell numbers of 2 United States senators, and he had a wife who adored him, a wife who had been by his side since before the billions, before the boardrooms, before the black cars and the charity galas and the magazine covers. But Vivienne would not stay silent. And what she uncovered, buried beneath the surface of a marriage the entire city of New York believed was perfect, would not just destroy a man, it would expose an empire. And it would redefine, for anyone watching, exactly what betrayal looks like when the person who betrayed you has $1 billion and the audacity to keep smiling. Before we go any further, before we walk into the boardrooms and the courtrooms and the private conversations that Carter Caldwell was absolutely certain would never see the light of day, let us pause here for just a moment and ask the questions that everyone who knew this couple eventually had to confront. How does a woman married to one of the most scrutinized men in American business get blindsided for nearly 6 years? How does a mistress live in plain sight, attending the same charity events, frequenting the same Upper East Side restaurants, orbiting the same social circle, without anyone saying a single word? And perhaps most devastating of all, when Vivienne finally found out, when the evidence was sitting right in front of her, in the form of a receipt, a room key, and a name she did not recognize, what did she do next? The answer to that last question is the part of this story that no one expected. Not Carter's lawyers, not the press, not even the people closest to Vivienne. Because what she did was not fall apart. What she did was get very, very quiet. And in the world of New York's elite, a quiet woman with access to her husband's financial records is the most dangerous thing imaginable. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand what happened inside the Caldwell marriage, you have to go back to Charlotte, North Carolina, in the spring of 1999. That was the year Carter Caldwell walked into a financial analyst training program at a mid-tier bank called Meridian Partners and sat down next to a woman named Vivienne Monroe, who was, by every account of everyone who knew her then, the smartest person in the room. She had graduated summa cum laude from Duke University with a double major in economics and applied mathematics. She had turned down a scholarship to Oxford because she believed the American financial market was about to enter the most interesting decade of her lifetime. She was 24 years old, and she was already right about everything. Carter was different. He was charming in a way that economic analysis cannot teach. He was tall, sharp-jawed, with dark brown hair, and the kind of easy confidence that made people want to tell him their secrets. He had grown up in a working-class neighborhood in Greensboro, North Carolina, the son of a mechanic and a school librarian, and he had earned every credential he possessed through a combination of relentless ambition and an almost frightening ability to read people. He saw in Vivienne something that most men of his generation were not equipped to recognize. He saw a partner, not a supporter, not a trophy, a genuine intellectual equal who happened to also be beautiful. A black woman, with high cheekbones and a quiet authority that could silence a conference room without raising her voice. They were married in 2002. The wedding was held at a small Baptist church in Charlotte that Vivienne's grandmother had attended her entire life. There was no luxury coordinator. There was no celebrity guest list. Carter wore a suit he had saved for 3 months to buy. Vivienne wore her mother's veil. By every photograph ever taken of that day, they were in love in the way that makes older people nostalgic and younger people hopeful. By 2006, Carter had co-founded Caldwell Hartley Capital with a Duke Business School classmate named Douglas Hartley. The timing was extraordinary. They positioned their fund against the housing bubble with a precision that would later be compared in a Fortune magazine profile to the prescience of Michael Burry. When the market collapsed in 2008, Caldwell Hartley Capital did not just survive, it triumphed. In 24 months, Carter Caldwell went from a regional success story to a nationally recognized name in finance. By 2011, his net worth had crossed $1 billion for the first time, and by 2015, he was a permanent fixture on the Forbes 400. Vivienne had not sat idle through any of it. She had left Meridian in 2004 to build her own boutique consulting firm, Monroe Strategy Group, which specialized in economic risk modeling for mid-size corporations. She had built it from 2 clients and a spare bedroom into a firm that employed 41 people and counted 7 Fortune 500 companies among its clients. She was respected. She was accomplished. She was Carter Caldwell's wife, but she was also entirely, unmistakably her own person, somewhere inside the architecture of a marriage that looked, from the outside, like a blueprint for the American dream. Somewhere in the space between the board dinners and the Hamptons weekends and the quiet Sunday mornings at their brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, something had begun to fracture. Carter had started staying later in the city. He had started taking calls he stepped outside to finish. He had started looking at his phone the way people look at something they are protecting. Vivienne noticed. She always noticed. She was, after all, a woman who built her career on recognizing patterns. The name Renata Cole first entered Vivienne Caldwell's life on a Tuesday evening in October of 2019. Vivienne had come home early from a client dinner in Midtown. A dinner that had ended abruptly when the client postponed the meeting by 48 hours. She had let herself into the brownstone, poured herself a glass of water, and walked into the home office they shared to drop off a file. Carter's laptop was open. He had not expected her home, and on the screen, visible in a messaging application he almost certainly believed was secure, was a thread of messages that Vivienne later described, in a deposition, as the kind of thing you see and immediately understand has been happening for a very long time. The messages were not ambiguous. They were not professional. They were, in the clinical language of the attorney, who would later read excerpts from them in a Manhattan courtroom, consistent with an ongoing, intimate relationship of significant emotional and material depth. Renata Cole had written, in one message from that same morning, that she was looking forward to Thursday at the suite. Carter had replied with 3 words, "I'll be there." Vivienne did not confront Carter that night. She did not call her sister, or her best friend, or her attorney. What she did was take a photograph of the screen with her own phone, close the laptop to exactly the angle she had found it, walk upstairs, and sit on the edge of the bed in the dark for approximately 2 hours. She did not cry. By the time Carter came home at 11:15, she was in bed with the lights off, and she answered his goodnight with the practiced ease of a woman who had already made a decision she had not yet told anyone about. What Vivienne had decided, sitting in that dark bedroom, was that she was not going to be the woman who confronts her husband in a panic and loses everything in the chaos of emotion. She was going to be the woman who finds out exactly what she is dealing with before she makes a single move. And so she began, quietly, methodically, with the same disciplined analytical precision she had applied to 20 years of economic modeling. She hired a private investigator named Gerald Whitmore, a former NIPT detective based in the Bronx, with 22 years of experience and a reputation for absolute discretion. And she paid him in cash from a personal account Carter did not know existed. Within 3 weeks, Gerald Whitmore had confirmed not only that Carter Caldwell was in a relationship with Renata Cole, but that the relationship was of a scale and duration that suggested it was, in every functional sense of the word, a second life. Renata Cole was 31 years old. She had worked briefly as a corporate events planner before Carter, using a shell company, had funded the launch of her lifestyle brand, Cole Collective, which had grown into a mid-seven-figure enterprise over 4 years. She lived in a penthouse in Tribeca. She drove a car that Carter's company had leased. She vacationed in places Carter had told Vivienne he was attending industry conferences. And she was not alone in knowing. Carter's business partner, Douglas Hartley, knew. Carter's chief of staff, a man named Preston Alves, knew. 2 members of Carter's inner circle had attended a private dinner with Renata Cole in the meatpacking district. A dinner that one of them had photographed for reasons no one has ever satisfactorily explained. The investigation took 11 weeks. By January of 2020, Vivienne Caldwell had a file that was, by her attorney's description, one of the most comprehensively documented cases of sustained marital deception encountered in 30 years of family law. Then she made her first call. Not to Carter, not to the press, to her attorney. And from that moment forward, Carter Caldwell's carefully constructed world began to develop the kind of cracks that no amount of money and no team of lawyers could seal. What Carter Caldwell did not know, what he could not have known, because he had badly underestimated the woman he had married, was that Vivienne had not merely uncovered an affair. She had uncovered a financial architecture, and that distinction would prove to be the difference between a quiet, heavily managed divorce settlement and one of the most consequential legal cases in New York family court history. The shell company that Carter had used to fund Renata Cole's business was called Veritas Holdings LLC, incorporated in Delaware, with an address that traced back to a registered agent firm in Wilmington. On paper, it was listed as a real estate development entity. In practice, it had been used to transfer approximately $3.1 million over 4 years to accounts connected to Renata Cole's lifestyle brand, to lease vehicles, to pay rent on the Tribeca penthouse, and to fund 2 international trips, one to the Maldives and one to a private villa outside Florence, Italy, both of which had been booked under the name of a corporate client that, upon investigation by Vivienne's legal team, turned out to be entirely fictitious. Vivienne's attorneys, she retained 2 firms, one specializing in high-net-worth divorce proceedings and one in financial forensics, began the process of tracing every connected entity. It was slow work. Carter's financial structure was complex by design. Caldwell Hartley Capital sat beneath a layered holding structure that had been built, partially, to protect assets from market volatility, but that same complexity, those same layers of subsidiaries and management entities and offshore accounts, now looked, under the scrutiny of a forensic accounting team, like something worth explaining very carefully to a judge. In March of 2020, Vivienne filed for divorce. The filing itself was not a surprise. Carter had been expecting it. His attorneys had prepared for it. What was a surprise was the scope of the financial claims. The petition alleged not only irreconcilable differences, but active concealment of marital assets, fraudulent transfer of community property through the Veritas holding structure, and what the filing described as a sustained pattern of financial deception undertaken for the material benefit of a third party at the direct expense of the marital estate. Carter's legal team, led by a high-profile attorney named Marcus Bellamy, out of a firm on Park Avenue, moved immediately to have several portions of the filing sealed. They argued that disclosing the financial details would harm Caldwell Hartley Capital's position with its institutional investors and constitute an unfair business disadvantage. The judge assigned to the case, the Honorable Patricia Okafor, who had been on the New York Family Court bench for 19 years, denied the motion. And she did so in terms that were, by the standards of judicial language, fairly pointed. The press had been watching. The Wall Street Journal's financial desk had picked up the story within 48 hours of the filing. Bloomberg followed. Then the New York Times. What they had not anticipated was Renata Cole. Renata Cole, who had been living quietly in the Tribeca penthouse through the early months of the divorce proceedings, made a decision that no one, not Carter, not Carter's lawyers, not Vivienne, had predicted. She retained her own attorney, a woman named Sylvia Drummond, whose practice focused on the legal rights of individuals in undisclosed financial arrangements. And in April of 2020, Renata Cole gave a sworn deposition in which she stated, under oath, that Carter Caldwell had told her on multiple occasions that he was in the process of separating from his wife, that she had believed their relationship was progressing toward marriage, and that she herself had not been fully informed of the financial structures Carter had used to support her business because, in her words, he handled everything and I trusted him completely. This was the moment when the case stopped being a divorce proceeding and started being something else. Because if Renata Cole was also a victim of Carter Caldwell's management, if Carter had deceived not only his wife, but also his mistress about the nature and extent of his financial arrangements, then the question of what Carter Caldwell was actually doing with that money and with those people became considerably more complicated, and it was entirely, catastrophically wrong. Before we go deeper into the investigation, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button right now, because what comes next is the part of this story nobody saw coming. The forensic accounting report was submitted to the court on June 9, 2020. It was 241 pages. It had taken 4 accountants 14 weeks to compile, and what it contained was not simply evidence of a hidden affair funded by marital assets. It was evidence of something far more reaching than anyone outside of Vivienne's legal team had understood was coming. Over the course of the 6-year period under examination, Carter Caldwell had used the Veritas Holdings structure to transfer not $3.1 million, which had been the initial estimate, but $6.8 million in assets that originated, in whole or in substantial part, from Caldwell Hartley Capital's management fee revenue. Revenue that was, by the terms of the partnership agreement, jointly owned. Revenue that had been declared to the IRS under the fund's corporate filings. Revenue that was, unambiguously, marital property. The report also identified 2 additional entities, a consulting firm registered in South Carolina called Pinnacle Advisory, and a real estate holding company registered in Nevada that had received payments from Veritas Holdings and appeared to have no legitimate business purpose whatsoever. The entities had no employees, no physical offices, and no documented services rendered. What they did have was bank accounts, and what had come out of those bank accounts, in a series of transfers structured to avoid automated bank reporting thresholds, was cash, in large quantities, over an extended period. When that portion of the report was read into the record, the courtroom went quiet in the particular way that courtrooms go quiet when the thing being said is larger than the case anyone thought they were in. Douglas Hartley, who was present in the gallery, left the room before the recess. He did not return. Carter Caldwell's legal team requested a recess. When the proceedings resumed, Marcus Bellamy had been joined at the defense table by 2 additional attorneys, one of whom was a specialist in federal tax law. The shape of the thing had changed. This was no longer purely a divorce proceeding. This was, at minimum, a case with serious implications for the financial integrity of Caldwell Hartley Capital and, potentially, for the fund's relationship with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Carter, for the first time in the proceedings, looked like a man who understood that he had made a mistake of a scale he could not manage. He sat at the defense table in a gray suit and a tie that was slightly, unmistakably, not quite straight. And for the first time since this had begun, Vivienne Caldwell allowed herself to look at him directly. The divorce settlement was reached in November of 2020, after 7 months of litigation, 4 emergency motions, 2 subpoenas to Caldwell Hartley Capital's financial records, and the resignation of Douglas Hartley from the fund's board of directors. The terms were sealed by mutual agreement of both parties, but the scale of the settlement was reported by 3 separate outlets, all citing sources familiar with the proceedings, to have been among the largest in New York family court history. Numbers cited ranged from $800 million to over $1 billion in total asset transfer and ongoing compensation. Carter Caldwell retained control of the fund, but Caldwell Hartley Capital spent the following year under review by the SEC's Division of Examinations. In August of 2021, the fund reached a settlement with the agency involving corrective disclosures and enhanced oversight mechanisms. Douglas Hartley launched a separate fund in 2022. Carter's name disappeared from the founding partner listing. Renata Cole's lifestyle brand, Cole Collective, entered voluntary dissolution in December of 2020. The Tribeca penthouse was vacated. Renata has not spoken publicly about Carter Caldwell since her deposition. She moved out of New York. She was spotted once, in the spring of 2021, at a farmer's market in Asheville, North Carolina, by someone who recognized her from the news coverage and described her as looking very much like someone who had been through something and was trying very hard to be somewhere else. Carter Caldwell still lives in Manhattan. He remarried in 2023. The wedding was private. There were no magazine profiles. And then there is Vivienne Caldwell, who sat in a dark bedroom in October of 2019 and made a decision, who spent 11 weeks building a file, who never once, in 7 months of one of the most closely watched divorce cases New York had seen in years, made a public statement that was intemperate, emotional, or in any way less than precise, who settled for a number that her friends and her attorneys and the people who covered the case still speak about in quiet, admiring tones. Vivienne, who relaunched Monroe Strategy Group in early 2021 with a new division focused on financial risk advisory for institutions navigating governance crises. Vivienne, who gave exactly one interview in the spring of 2022 to a journalist who had covered the case from the beginning. In that interview, she was asked, was there a moment in the middle of all of it when she had considered simply letting it go? Vivienne Caldwell looked at the journalist for a long moment before she answered. Then she said, letting it go and walking away with nothing? Or letting it go and knowing the truth? Those are 2 very different things. I was never going to let the truth go. That was never a consideration. Everything else was negotiable. She smiled after she said it, and it was, by every account of everyone who has ever described her, the particular smile of a woman who has already won. So we ask you now, sitting with this story, thinking about the choices made in that Brooklyn Heights brownstone and in that Manhattan courtroom, what is the line between loyalty and complicity? At what point does staying become a kind of surrender? And if you had been in Vivienne's position, if you had walked into that home office and seen what she saw, would you have had the discipline to sit in the dark, be patient, and do what she did? Leave your answer in the comments. We want to know what you think. Every week, we bring you stories like this one. Stories that were never supposed to be told. Voices that were meant to stay hidden. The lives of real people, navigating the kind of betrayal and consequence and quiet courage that most of us will never face, but that all of us, on some level, understand. Vivienne Caldwell did not ask for this story to be hers, but she carried it with the kind of dignity that makes you believe, genuinely believe, that some people are built for the moments that would destroy others. Carter Caldwell had $1 billion and a strategy and a team of lawyers, and Vivienne had the truth and the patience to wait until the truth was ready to speak for itself. If this story moved you, if it made you angry or impressed or quietly thoughtful about the relationships in your own life, hit that like button right now. It tells us that stories like this matter to you, and it helps us reach more people who need to hear them. And if you are not yet subscribed to Hidden Yet Heard Tales, this is the moment. Hit subscribe, turn on that notification bell, because our next story, and I promise you, it is the kind of story that will make you want to call someone you trust and tell them immediately, is coming very soon, and you do not want to miss it. Tell us what part of this story stayed with you. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. Every story deserves to be told. Every voice deserves to be heard. This has been Hidden Yet Heard Tales. We will see you for the next one.